Okay. All right. So I guess I'll start with kind of where this project's at right now. Again, I mentioned where it started. It was just a handful of photos, but since February of 2023, I have photographed almost 180 churches all over the state of Ohio and then a few of our neighboring states as well. I've photographed well over 3,000 individual stained glass windows, 100 or so organs in their console, and I've gathered probably a couple hundred historical photos as well that you're just not going to find on the internet. Here in a second, I'm going to start pulling up some photos for you all. The first topic I am going to get into a little bit today is going to be the stained glass, probably the most popular subject of this topic. Everybody loves a good stained glass window. One moment while I pull all these photos up. This is also my first ever experience with Zoom, so everybody bear with me for a second. So we're going to start with stained glass. I'm going to talk about a few topics and do that first. So that's my logo, Churches of Ohio. Here's one of my personal favorite windows. This can be found in Circleville, First Presbyterian. You'll notice the vibrant colors throughout the glass, and you can see pretty quickly why stained glass is some of people's favorite topic. Now, when I go to these buildings, I try to photograph every single stained glass window within them, big, small, unique, seen it before, whatever. I'll photograph it just like what you see here. This one is interesting. That's St. George, and that's also in an Orthodox church. Next, I'll show you a couple of exterior photos. I not only photograph stained glass, but I photograph the outside fully as well. First Presbyterian of Van Wart. This is one of my favorites, Mansfield, St. Timothy's, Home 2-3 Tiffany glass windows. St. Martin de Porres, I might have butchered that, but that is in Toledo. Back to the stained glass. This is in First Presbyterian Church of Circleville. Again, the vibrant colors. You also come across simpler glass. I call this geometric. It's more so shapes and iconography of various religious aspects, like this one found on Gay Street Methodist of Mount Vernon, Ohio. This is from Mansfield, my hometown of Mansfield, so I'm a little biased towards the churches here. This is from First Methodist Church on the square of Mansfield, Ohio. This one is the Episcopal Church, Mansfield, Ohio. I put this window in here just because there's a little Easter egg in here. Also, the Episcopal Church of Mansfield, Ohio. If you're familiar with glass at all, or the Last Supper, what you see here. It's not a typical depiction in stained glass around here, but this one has a little Easter egg from its German creator. It is a German-made window. If you look to the left end of the table, you're going to see a glass of beer. Obviously, the Last Supper, they probably didn't have glasses of beer, but the artist of this window wanted to leave his mark, and he did, right there at the end of the table. Why I photograph stained glass. I never realized just how many stained glass domes we have in Ohio. They're all over the place, and they're one of my favorite features. Something about the stained glass domes, they just really draw me in. I don't know why, but I love them. This one can be found in Maslin. This is one of those Tiffany windows that I had mentioned earlier from St. Timothy's and Maslin as well. Tiffany windows are always a pleasure to photograph because you'll notice the vibrant colors. Now, these windows, you get that 3D effect you might see there, the vibrant colors that are there, because of how thick they are. These windows are layered. It's not one single pane of glass, it's layered glass. That's how you get that 3D effect you kind of see there in that window. Tiffany windows are sought after, and there's not too many of them out there anymore. I also come across more modern glass sometimes. This is Maslin, Ohio as well. St. Mary's, the Catholic church there. You're going to see, if you look really close, you'll see the crucifixion depicted in that window. These windows date to the 50s or 60s. I can't quite remember, but I consider that modern by stained glass standards. This one is from Kalita. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it's St. Michael's Catholic Church, another very beautiful building. Several beautiful windows like this adorn the sides. First Presbyterian in, man, I'm doing this by memory, so bear with me. This window, Napoleon, Ohio, this window depicts grabbing to the rugged cross. It's not something that's depicted very often either. You can see somebody there hanging on to the cross as floodwaters push through. Last but not least, for our stained glass section, this can be found in Pure Heart of Mary Catholic Church, Shelby, Ohio. I have this one here just to show the maker's mark. If you look in the lower right-hand corner there, you'll see Munster, Germany, and the name that created it. I'm not going to try and pronounce that. But most windows, if you look close, you might find one of those maker's marks. At least one of the windows in the structure is probably going to have it. So our next topic, really quick, is going to be interiors. So I get interior photos as well. This is from the choir loft of St. Patrick Church, Toledo. When you go to the loft of these churches, you can get some really nice photos like what you see here. St. Martin de Porres in Toledo, once again. And then this one is Most Pure Heart of Mary in Shelby. This one is one of my personal favorites. This church is adorned by murals, as you can see on the walls and above the altar space there. These murals were done by Gerard Lammers, a renowned artist. He did several Catholic church murals like what you see here. And this one just so happens to be about 15 minutes from my home, so I like to visit often. But yeah, Pure Heart of Mary here, one of my personal favorites, because the murals that adorn it. Even the Stations of the Cross were done by Mr. Lammers. St. Mary's of Dayton. As you can see, it's a very opulent structure. Beautiful details, almost have gold-like hue to it. This photo isn't edited or filtered. That is what it looks like if you walk there on a nice sunny day. St. Mary's, Dayton, Ohio. First Presbyterian. This one I like because of the Tiffany window above the altar space. One of the largest Tiffany windows I've ever seen or photographed. That window was so heavy. It was put in after the construction of the building. The building wasn't actually designed to hold it because it wasn't originally supposed to be there. They had to restructure behind and below the window there to actually hold the weight of the window. Again, Tiffany glass, very heavy because it's several layers. St. Xavier, Cincinnati, Ohio. You've heard a lot of cities today. You've probably gathered I go all over the place. I do. From Toledo to Cincinnati, all the way to Marietta and up into Maslin. St. Xavier, Cincinnati, Ohio. St. Mary's, Hyde Park, also Cincinnati. This one's a little different to your typical Catholic architecture. It almost has more of an Episcopal church look and layout to it, but it is indeed a Catholic church. St. Mary's, Hyde Park, Cincinnati. This is Mansfield as well. First Methodist on the square. You'll see the beautiful organ facade behind their altar space there. Last for the interior photos, First Presbyterian of Van Wart. You might have noticed the Presbyterian churches I've shared, a lot of them kind of have this look to it here. So you can tell a lot. You can usually look at a photo and probably understand what denomination you're looking at here. You probably also gathered that I do all denominations. I do. Anything from Baptist to Orthodox Catholic. I'm going to visit it, photograph their building. Let's see. All right. Third topic, exteriors. I photograph every church, big or small. This is a small little church in a small little town called Woodstock, Ohio. It is an old Universalist church. This one I liked because the stained glass window is actually a Civil War memorial, not something you see typically in church windows. If you look close, you can kind of see what I'm talking about there. It is a Civil War memorial. I can't remember exactly what it is memorialized off the top of my head, but that's what it is. We got, like I said, big and small. This one is a big one. Springfield, Ohio. It's a massive Catholic church. You can tell by those huge towers, especially the one on the right there. St. Mary's of Dayton. We just discussed this one. I like to put a face to that interior. That interior was beautiful, just as the outside is as well. All angles. So sometimes these churches are in some pretty hard places to photograph. This one was one of the hardest ones. This is in Cincinnati, Ohio, about as high as you can go on top of a mountain. There it is. There's really no way to photograph that one from straight on. Foliage, hills, and parked cars are my worst enemy when it comes to photographing these structures. St. Mary Hyde Park, I just discussed this one a little bit ago. There's the exterior for you. This one was photographed during the fall. You can tell by the orange foliage there. This one is one of my favorite topics. So this is Napoleon, Ohio, First Presbyterian. You're going to notice just by looking at it, it's not your typical architecture, not just for churches, but Ohio in general. These are made of red sandstone, as you can see. These are neat because the sandstone was mined from my hometown here in Mansfield. Mansfield had a unique vein of red sandstone, like what you see here. It's the only place around here you can get it. Now, this one, most of these red sandstone churches were designed by Packard. This one is not. It's very misleading. When we're done here, look up Frank Packard. He's a very interesting architect. There are several red churches like this all throughout Ohio. Shelby, Bucyrus, Upper Sandusky, etc. They all have this unique look to them. And the tower almost gives you kind of an Asian feel to it. It's just not typical of Ohio architecture. London, Ohio, First Methodist Church. This is one of my favorite ones just because of the stonework there. Now, when I photograph the outside of these buildings, I do a lot of close-up photos too, not just these outer, far-out photos. I'll zoom in on the fine details of the towers and the stonework, cornerstones, all that stuff as well. All right. First Methodist of Van Wert. If you ever get a chance to look this one up, it's worth to look up as well. Very stunning wood ceiling inside of it. All right, we're going to move on to fourth topic here, organs. So I have a lot of organ players or just fanatics that follow my page, people that play the organ. They love the organ. It's a very sophisticated instrument, and it's not cheap either to maintain. So I really like to show off the churches and the organs that they have because a lot of love and dedication goes into keeping these things playing. When I photograph these organs, I don't just photograph the pipes and the facade. I also photograph the console you see here. So you'd be surprised how hard it is to find a photo of some of these things. I'm trying to change that. When I say I photograph every inch of these buildings, I mean that. You guys don't see every photo that I take. Most churches, I take anywhere from 200 to 300 photos, and I share 60 to 80 of them. But I want to make sure that 100 years from now, when I'm not around, if somebody wants to see this particular organ, they're going to be able to find at least a photo of it. I also take a photo of all the stops, every little piece you can think of. This one's nice because it's a Shantz organ from Orrville, Ohio. You're going to find those all over the place as well. All right. We're going to move on to fifth topic, abandonment and loss. So this is kind of what inspired me to keep it going as well. If you know much about churches and how that's going, they're closing at a faster rate than I would like to see. And unfortunately, some of these buildings are left like what you see here. This is the Presbyterian Church in Springfield, Ohio. you're going to see where there's Halloween decorations decorated out front. The windows are busted out, roof is falling apart, tent, there's people living in it. Now, this one I did get permission to get into. I don't break and enter, don't worry. I get permission to enter any of these buildings like this one. So it is abandoned. You can see where the pipes, the organ has been ravaged by scrappers, for lack of better terms. The building was left to rot, unfortunately. Unfortunately, First Presbyterian in Springfield closed before I was even born. I'm only 29, born in 95. So I wouldn't have gotten the chance to photograph this anyways. And that's also why I'm doing the project. I want to get a photo of these buildings now while I'm young and I can get it done. Last but not least for the, oh no, I got a couple more. I guess I forgot how many have actually closed. So just since I started this project, a handful have actually closed that I photographed. And that's concerning because I've only been doing it for about a year and 3/4. This one here is Peace Lutheran, Galion, Ohio. This one is no longer a functioning church. They are looking for a buyer, but it's always disheartening when you see not just a church, but any historical structure. You can't even get close to it, and it's surrounded by yellow tape like what you see here. It's just not, it's very disheartening. So they were a functioning church up until about last year. You can see some minor damage to the tower there. Hopefully they find a buyer for that one. This one is Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary Catholic Church by Cleveland. This one was actually bulldozed about a year ago. I didn't get permission to go into this one, I'll be honest with you on that one. There were plenty of entryways, but this church closed back in the 90s. As you can see, when I got there, it was pretty rough. Now, do I like photographing stuff like this? Absolutely not. I wish I didn't have to, but at the same time, I'm glad that I did get a chance to actually see the structure. I wish I did have pretty photos of this one for you all, but I did get to visit this building and document it in any way I could. This one recently closed in Columbus. I'm not really totally sure what's going on with this one. It's not a functioning church anymore. As far as I know, they're keeping it up, but it's in Columbus. You can see it's a beautiful building. So hopefully something's done with it. I would hate to see this building go. This one's one of my personal favorites. It has been since I started the project. Beautiful Gothic look to it. You can see the high altar. The original altar is still back there. And then the ceiling in this building. That alone is why I want to see it saved the most. It's an absolute work of art, just like all the rest of them. I would hate to see it go. Hopefully, they have plans for this one. All right, we're going to move on to topic number 6 is history. So this is probably my favorite topic of all, the history of these buildings. I love history. I love digging it up, and I love finding photos like this to share with you all. So I love getting historical photos like this from these churches. Most of your churches have an archive, and it's just there. There's tons of stuff in there, and you won't find it online. It's just there. So I knock on these places' doors, and they usually let me in. I'll take all the photos I can. I'll scan photos such as this, and I digitalize it and put it into my digital archive here, so they live on forever. Whenever I can get a hold of photos like this, the physical photo, I love to add them to my archive as well. Now, I love photos like this in particular. This is an old Christmas photo from Methodist Church, Van Wart. You can see the Christmas trees with candles on them. Yes, candles. I love old photos like this because the times were just different. Also, old photos like this are great pieces for the history of their organ and whatnot. The organ there is not arranged like that anymore, and I find lots of old photos of organs that just simply don't exist anymore. These old photos are probably all we have left of them. Another old Christmas photo. It seems to be a common photograph your church back in the 1800s day would be Christmas. This is Emmanuel Lutheran of Marion 1893. Again, Christmas trees with big old candles on them. And it doesn't look like there's electricity here yet. All right, postcards, always a very key piece of history. If we didn't have the postcards we do of some of these buildings, you'd be hard pressed to find any other photo of them. This is a good example of that. Not too many photos of the First German Methodist Church of Marion left, but we do have postcards. I love photos like this, groundbreaking. Most of your churches photographed this event. It was a very big deal for these people at the time. A lot of these people were immigrants. They came here with nothing. They worked hard and gave everything they could to make sure they had a church they wanted to worship in. These people are overjoyed, as you can see, because they're groundbreaking and they're going to build that one. All right, photos like this. So this church, a little brief history, they ended up dismantling it and building another one down the road. So this is a photo of the church being dismantled, not necessarily demolished. It was an old tradition that you wouldn't just demolish them. You would basically move everything you could and build a new church with the old one. I like this one because you got the little boys there just being boys. Yes, very nice. First Methodist Church of Mansfield. This photo in particular is interesting just because you can see how overflowing those are. You don't get that too often nowadays. This photo would bring a tear to most pastors' eyes by today's standards. First English, of Mansfield was actually the biggest Protestant congregation in Ohio for quite a while. Another First English Lutheran of Mansfield. This is your Episcopal Church, Trinity Episcopal of Toledo, another older photo. Again, the times. I love looking at vehicles, the clothing, the lighting. It really helps you to kind of date this photo. I'd put this one as about 1908, 1910. You can even see the tram tracks through the bricks there. This is in Canton, Ohio, the Presbyterian Church. That's a nice organ, for lack of better terms. It's a nice one. It's huge. This is your Baptist Church of Loudonville. This one was kind of cool because it's a Baptist church, so they got a baptismal pool there. You can see in the old photos how the painting above that just changed over the decades. That organ's no longer there either. All right, so our next topic, we're almost there, ladies and gentlemen, almost done. Archive. So this is where I get into kind of what I do behind the scenes with physical objects I obtain. This is actually my newest addition, these 4 chairs here that I'm actively trying to figure out what to do with them, what they're worth, where they came from, all the works. The wife isn't too thrilled, I'll be honest with you. They're bigger than they look, but they are staying. I'm keeping them forever. I also take ceramics. I love ceramics. I don't know if they used to do fundraisers or what. That's what I assume stuff like this is from. But there's so many plates and bells and vases with churches and the photo of these churches. It's just a nice little way to kind of display my archive. They're usually fancy and very pretty. I also take books like this. You can see where it was the Lutheran Publication Society. It's kind of cool. Whenever I get a book like this, I will digitalize every single page within it. Now, none of that is publicly available yet, maybe someday, but any history books, stuff like this I get, every single page in it, I do digitalize that to make sure that I have it somewhere other than the physical copy here. Anything like this I obtain is kept in a room, dehumidified, low light, temperature controlled, hopefully lasts longer than I do. Cats meows. They're kind of silly. Some people think it's silly, but I've found some of these where there's not even any photos of the churches out there, but there's cats meows. I love these things. I collect those as well. An example of the plates. And then I also get really neat stuff like this every now and then. This is from the Holy Name Church in Cleveland. It's a Bible school, ribbon, medal. They used to do this pretty common back in the day. Stuff like this just didn't really survive the time, and somehow I'm ending up with some of these things as well. Old photos. My favorite thing to get are actual old photos like this, one of a kind. Can't get them anywhere else. So I'm not picky with my archival stuff. I take about anything. These are never before seen photos of Mansfield. And then even the Cliff House of San Francisco, California, never before seen. You're not going to find too many photos of that building. And somehow I ended up with it here in Mansfield, Ohio. All right. So that is the last of the photos there for you. So I want to discuss real quick what my hopes and dreams are. Then we'll do that. Hopes and dreams for this project. So I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you yet, because it's already turned into way more than what I ever thought it would. At the way it's looking, in the next 10 years or so, I would like to have an actual historical society of some kind, be a recognized archive, all that good stuff. I do want to make a difference. When I say that, I mean 50 years from now, I may not be here. Some of these churches that I photographed may not be either. If somebody wants to see photos of this church 50 years from now, I want them to be able to do so, because I'm already running into that problem. Churches that have closed or they've been demolished, long gone, you can't find anything. No photos, no history, nothing. It's almost like it never existed. And that's kind of my motivation to keep doing this. I don't want any of these structures to ever be forgotten and treated as though they never existed. That's just a shame. A lot of dedication and love went into building these structures by probably all of our ancestors. Just I hate to see them go. All right. So I do want to discuss what I'm doing here shortly as well. If you do follow the page, you might be aware of the upcoming trip I'm doing to Youngstown, Steubenville, and then I'm even going to hit Pittsburgh. I had mentioned that I like to go to neighboring states when I can, and Pittsburgh has quite a bit to see. With this trip, I'm probably going to get about 35 to 40 more churches photographed. Now, that sounds like a lot, but I sat down, made a list of Ohio itself, just Ohio, just historical churches, and I came up with a list of about 1,400 of them. So even if I keep busting out these big trips once a year, 35, 40 a piece, it's still going to be a pretty long time before I run out of churches to photograph. Now, I do want to say thank you all for coming. I do appreciate the support I've gotten with the page. And then, did anybody have, I guess this would be a good time to stop and take any questions there may be.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yes, sir.
We do have a couple questions already, but please, if you
I
guys
see
have
that. Yeah.
questions, type those into the chat box. So I'll just start reading some of these off to you, Kyle.
Go for it.
So if a community is interested in having you come visit their churches, how
Mm-hmm.
should they go about getting a hold of you?
So, if you go to the page, you'll see at the top I have a phone number or email. So you can actively text me on that or email the Churches of Ohio at Yahoo, and I usually get back within a pretty short time. Now, with that, I like to mention that I try to plan trips to be the most economic as possible. I am 29. I have two daughters and a wife and a full time job. So sometimes, like going down to Portsmouth on a whim just isn't possible. So I'll make a list of churches in that area, and I usually try to get back to you when I'm coming to your area, if that makes sense.
And our next question here is,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a goal of visiting every church and sacred place in the state?
Yes, but being 1,400 of them, and that's only that I know of. It's a good thing I'm only 29. But yeah, I don't plan on stopping until I can say there's nothing left to do.
you foresee yourself being able to put together a photo book of this project?
Probably several, yes. um, I'm just so busy with life in general that putting a book together right now just isn't totally feasible, but I do plan to do that hopefully within the next year or so.
Sounds good. We got a shutter bug on here. What camera equipment do you use to document all these
Uh,
churches?
that's my number one question, and it's gonna make you laugh, I'm sure. An iPhone 14 Pro.
It
Yeah,
does
I
the
did.
job, and
Yeah,
it's a
it
lot better
does.
than most cameras. So,
Yeah.
before we get too far in, I just wanted to share with everyone. I'm putting it in the chat now. For any of you that are going to have questions about, saving historic places that are churches and other places of worship, we did a webinar a couple years ago, so I'm just putting the link to that right now in the chat to send to everyone with Partners for Sacred Places. So if you have questions about funding, restoration work, saving churches, that webinar is a good one to listen to. So it kind of gives you an introduction into the kind of financing out there that can save houses of worship. So,
Mhm.
all right, next question here. Let's see, reading the question. So, can you e- share a couple places, if like you had to come up with like, okay, you guys have limited time.
Mhm.
These are my top 5 places I say everyone should visit in Ohio.
Gosh. So that is the one, probably the hardest question I get. I think I just posted about it a couple of days ago. I had put a list of my top 11, and I mean, it was hard. So I've visited, like I said, about 180 at this point. So just picking the top five. And I always feel like I upset people when I do that because they feel like, oh, my church is so pretty and he didn't put it in the top five. But I'll give you my top five real quick. So I don't look at it's hard to explain how I go by top five. I'm very picky. I look at the fine details, something that makes it unique that somebody else might not consider that top five material. In the top five is like Napoleon, the first Presbyterian that I showed, that red sandstone one. I don't know why, but I have loved those red sandstone churches since the day I first saw one. And it is my mission to get to every single one of those as well. So that's top five. Pure Heart of Mary, I kind of touched on that in Shelby. I don't know if I'm biased because it's so close to my house, but I love the murals in that building. Rosary Cathedral in Toledo. I didn't show any photos of that today. Definitely worth stopping to see. We'll do two more for you. It's so hard. Um, St. Peter's and Mansfield. Again, I'm probably biased to Mansfield, but St. Peter's, a beautiful Catholic church. One more. Whew. First Church of New Knoxville, Ohio. Beautiful church, stained glass dome above the altar, beautiful German made glass. This church has a German built tower. You can tell it's German by the architecture behind it. Has all four clock faces still working. I even got to see I call it a ticker. I'm sure there's a technical term for it, but I say the clock's ticker, German made, still ticking 120 something years later. So I get to see a lot of things too that people don't get to see. It's hard to explain. I go to the basements, the attics, so it's fun.
You saying that, I was just recently in the St. Michael's Catholic Church in Findlay, and it's kind of interesting that the
Okay,
building
yeah.
has gone through several massive redesigns across its life, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting that the basement, at some point in the 1940s or 50s, they kind of turned it into a youth area of the church,
Yeah.
um, and it was just absolutely like the wood surfaces were covered with graffiti. And I'm like, oh, they have to save those. That's wonderful.
Absolutely, yes. Sometimes it's the small things like that. You just got to appreciate it.
And just like one other thing about that kind of art Japanese Oriental styled
Mhm.
churches that you just mentioned, you'll be kind of near another one. I know there's one in Barnesville, Ohio, which is a little bit
Yes.
south of Steubenville. So when
Oh,
you're
trust me, I know. It's on the list.
very good. All right, next questions here. We Judith wants you to visit all of Eastern Ohio along the river. She wants to know if you're going to be in East Liverpool, and also mentions that Marietta has 6 to 7 very historic and lovely churches of all differing architectural styles. So
So East
you're just gonna need
Liverpool.
to plan a weekend on the Ohio River, I think, at this point.
So East Liverpool is on my list for the upcoming trip, yes. And then Marietta, I actually did every church in Marietta already, except for just one. I think it's the oldest one in Marietta I did not get. If she messages the page, I'll send her links.
Sounds great.
Mhm.
All right. Any further questions from the audience before we go for the day? So please start typing those in. So, Kyle, I just wanted to thank you once again for spending the time with us today to do this webinar. This was absolutely wonderful. I love seeing all of your images, and really just I think it underscores just the absolute architectural diversity that's available to us in Ohio. Having so many immigrant styles, and then just blossoming during the gas boom and industrialization of Ohio. Really, you get to see this absolute panoply of designs that a lot of states don't get to have. So we're rather
Yes.
fortunate in Ohio.
And yeah, that's what I tell people is go enjoy it. If you're Presbyterian, go check out the local Catholic church. If you're not even religious, just go check them out. They're beautiful buildings. Really, just appreciate them. We're very lucky to have the amount of architecture we do here in Ohio. And like you said, it's from all the different immigrants. And yeah, it. I could go on for hours. I don't want to keep you all day.
Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'll just leave everyone today with our next webinar is going to be on the history of Formica, and then it's going to be on April 30th. I believe we're sending out the notice next week about that signing up. It's already available on our website, heritageohio.org, to sign up. Also going up on LinkedIn and Facebook later today. So without further ado, I'll thank everyone for coming today. Thanks again, Kyle, and we'll see you at our next webinar. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks for having me.